Hello everyone, welcome to another Guild Wars 2 build video. I guess Build Wars 2, is that what we're going to call it, possibly? But I had another build that I really wanted to show you guys, and so this is why I'm making this video. So, in the previous build that I posted, it was a supportive warrior build, okay, a supportive spellbreaker build. And this is also a supportive spellbreaker build. It's kind of similar. It's not going to be super different from the previous video, but I believe that it works better with actually being a spellbreaker, and it focuses a little bit less on just being core warrior, because you could easily do this build or the other build with core warrior because it just uses axes, but this one actually makes use of the daggers more, and it's actually got dual daggers, so I believe this is probably a better version, but it depends on your playstyle, it depends on your preferences. So what I'm running here is first of all, I've got Marauder's equipment, okay, and this is exotic. I still don't have an ascended head armor piece, but this is all Marauder's gear, and I've actually got Assassin's daggers. And most of my trinkets are assassins, or sorry, not assassins, marauders. With the exception, my amulet is assassins, my accessory is assassins, and I don't even know what this other accessory is. I've had this accessory since Fractals first came out, and I randomly got it. And I really don't want it, but it's so hard to get accessories. I'm gonna wait for her laurels. Anyway, so my idea is that you would use it's actually not that you would use Marauder, okay, because if you're going full supportive, then you would actually probably want to use a different stat set, but I'll get into that in a second. Because the Warhorn, I actually spent so much time and money trying to level Huntsman on my Ranger in order to make this Warhorn. And it's got minstrel stats, okay? And minstrel stats, if you're not familiar with them, their main attributes are toughness and healing power, with minor attributes of vitality and concentration. And I really think this is perfect for this kind of build. The only thing is, if you've only got one piece of gear like I do, then it's gonna kind of be a problem. So it's not gonna have too much of an effect. So we'll see. But it does have a little bit of an effect. I actually don't even have a sigil on it. I cannot believe I am such a plebeian. But I'm going to get one eventually. So, Marauder's gear is most of it, and that's why I have 22,000 health. Probably with the daggers, the sigils that I'm running, I've got the 7% critical chance on the first one, and I've got the 30% stun duration for the superior sigil of paralyzation. You could easily run a different sigil on this one, but that essentially means, and I could easily switch these around, by the way, to where the stun duration is actually on the first one, and that way when you use this actual stun, it's going to last 30% longer. So I just thought that may have helped, but you could run different sigils. As for the horn, the Warhorn, you'd probably want to run some kind of supportive sigil. I had one before. This one is a superior sigil of water. That's where you 30% chance on hit to heal nearby allies around your target. That could work. It kind of depends. Whatever you really want to do, if something that you have increases boon duration or something like that, it's really up to you. But in general, you want to pick some kind of supportive sigil for the Warhorn because it's a supportive weapon. So you want to do that. Next, we're going to move on to the skills. So let's move on to the actual build here. And you've got dual daggers for one, and that really helps because we got something that synergizes in the traits with the offhand dagger. We'll get into that later. But then also you've got the dagger and Warhorn. And this really does not do a lot of damage. I'm just telling you right now that the dagger is not a damage weapon, and because of that, it's really not going to don't expect to be at the top of the DPS meter. Just really don't. It's got a little bit of CC, and it's got 2 boon removal skills. It's also got some soft CC with the slow, and then a tiny bit of might generation. Okay, it's really not for damage, so don't expect it to be. The Warhorn is going to synergize with quick breathing, so you got a lot of group Condi removal. It's so good in that regard. So that's going to be the main, one of the main parts of this build. Of course, natural healing and Featherfoot Grace, because I can't get away from these skills. I love them too much. Then we've got Banner of Defense, Banner of Tactics, and the Battle Standard. Okay, and I have been using this build in Fractals, Tier 4 Fractals, and it has been really seriously doing work at keeping the party together, even in really difficult situations. The thing is, with this Condi removal, if they are crippled, immobilized, and chilled, and have some other kind of condition, 2 conditions, this skill by itself will remove 5 conditions. Call to Arms, if they have weakness, and then 2 other conditions, it will remove 3 conditions. So, very, very useful in that respect. When they have weakness and some other conditions, what you generally want to use is Call to Arms. And if they have some movement impairing conditions, then you use Charge, and that will remove those in addition to other conditions, such as burning, poison, bleeding, confusion, slow, whatever. So, it's just so good, okay? Just super support. Really, what I'm mostly watching is this area of the screen, is the party interface, because when you look at the party interface, then you can actually see when your allies have conditions and stuff, and you know when to use these things. You can also know when people are low on health, and that is not super important, because what you really want to make sure of is constant 100% regeneration uptime, okay? And that is what this build is able to put out, and that is through the Banner of Defense and Tactics. So let's go ahead and move on to the traits. So first of all, we've got the Tactics, and the quick breathing is going to allow our Warhorn skills to recharge very quickly and also remove conditions. That is absolutely required for this build. The second trait, I've gone Empower Allies. This will increase power of your party by 150. If you've got some other warrior in your party that's running it, perhaps a Condi Berserker that's running it, then you could easily switch to Shrug It Off. That's just some extra group Condi removal, and it doesn't do the healing like what I'm running. But you could change it, but it's probably better that you stick with Failing Strength. But yeah, that leads me into the last one, is Failing Strength. You're applying 4 1/4 second, because you've got the Minstrel's Warhorn. You get 4 1/4 seconds of might every time you apply might to yourself, and that I think that applies with the Battle Standard. I'm not sure, but it also applies with the dagger, the 3rd auto attack. So if you inflict a critical hit, which is very likely, then you could actually grant you and your party 2 might. So very interesting. Yeah, you could go Vigorous Shouts and then just do Shrug It Off just for that little tiny heal, and there's just a very limited synergy with that, but it's not great. But yeah, so the main thing is Failing Strength. That's what I'm really running a lot here. And then the second trait is Discipline. We've got the Warrior Sprint, of course. You could easily run Vengeful Return. I talked about this in a previous build. This one doesn't matter so much, but I really like the Warrior Sprint just because the dagger, the burst skill is going to remove immobilization. And so if you really need to get around the battlefield and you've already used Charge, then you can just use Breaching Strike and it will remove immobilization. But you could also easily use Vengeful Return, and it will increase your survivability when you are downed. Okay, so next one, this is super important, the Inspiring Battle Standard. You get a grant regeneration to allies with the banners. Okay, so this is so important. This is absolutely vital for this build, okay? So that means that the Banner of Defense is going to output essentially 90 seconds of regeneration. So is the Banner of Tactics. The battle standard is gonna put 60 seconds of regeneration. Gosh, I got hiccups. So what you would want to do is, see, there are 30 seconds where this banner is just completely on cooldown. Meaning, if you use these banners right next to each other, there's going to be a lot of time where your party is completely going without regeneration. And that's not good. You want to maintain constant regeneration to give, basically, the entire party Healing Signet. Right? Because Healing Signet is a skill that warriors can use to constantly regenerate health. Yeah, to constantly regenerate health, and instead you're granting it to all of your allies, which is just so good. And remember that these banner targets, they have 10 targets, so yeah, very, very useful. What you want to do is, you're going to be mainly watching the left side of the screen, and then also you're going to be watching the cooldowns on your banners, because you want to make sure that the cooldown is maybe somewhere around 75 seconds before you lay down your second banner. And if you need some emergency regeneration, if like both of your banners on cooldown because you messed up on something, then you can maybe use a battle standard to get rid of that. But the battle standard I mainly use to revive fallen allies in Fractals, because sometimes you just running around, the action is so intense, and you can't really take the time to revive an ally. You just plop the battle standard down, and then they get revived, and they also get regeneration, and then all those other boons. So, very, very useful. Next trait is Burst Mastery, and that's just going to give you extra adrenaline. For the Breaching Strike, that's extra boon removal, and then also allows you to proc your full counter more often. And the full counter is just, it's really good because it's just complete damage removal. It just, I love that the full counter is not, it's not a block, it's not an evade, right? Unblockable skills have no effect. It's just damage reduced 100%, meaning no matter what kind of skill it is, it just does 0 damage. It's really good. Brief side note about how much I love full counter. And then lastly we have Spellbreaker. So we've got Pure Strike, where you do increase critical damage, especially if the foe is boonless, and that helps since you've got boon removal. And then you've got Sun and Moon Style. And now what this means is that you've got quickness if you've got just the dagger and Warhorn, but if you need a little bit of extra healing for yourself, or conditions are not a huge issue, or if you just want to do a little bit of extra damage with some healing on the side, then you could switch to dagger, and now all of a sudden you've got a lot of extra critical hits and a lot of extra healing that's going out to yourself. So very, very cool for that. That's actually has a use. In the previous build I had slow counter, and that was just kind of a general thing. It doesn't really help you all that much, but the Sun and Moon Style, you're able to actually make full use of it in this build, so that's good. And then the last is Magebane Tether for the might generation. I'm finding more and more that that Magebane Tether is probably the best thing for Spellbreaker to use in PvE. It's really good might generation, and the revenge counter is only really useful if there are a lot of conditions, which usually isn't too much of a problem in PvE. And the enchantment collapse is pretty much only useful in PvP. So Magebane Tether, it's going to give you extra might, and because of failing strength, it's also going to give your allies might. And it's also another CC if you really need it, because it's unblockable, and you don't have a lot of CC in this build. You just got this one skill, Disrupting Stab, and so sometimes it can feel like I'm still used to using my peak performance dual axis build, so I'm used to having just CC whenever I want it, with the Bull's Charge and with the kick. So now that I've got so much less, sometimes I end up using the Magebane Tether when my party needs a little bit of extra CC. So anyway, that's this build. If you enjoyed this, be sure and leave a like, and if you want to see more warrior builds, just tell me, and feel free to subscribe as well, because I'm trying to put out some videos just to let people know about the warrior builds I've been using. I'm really, really enjoying running this build. I hope you will too. I think we should probably see a lot more supportive warriors out there rather than just trying to just be Condi DPS. I really think this is a cool build, and it's really fun to play as well. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.